to direct and guide us in all our consultations, and grant that we, having thy fear always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudices, and partial affections, the result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the king, the public weal, peace and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
The House now resumes its sitting. Call of the roll.
Mrs. Holness, Mr. Bartlett, Mr. Holness, Dr. Clark, Dr. Chang, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Samuda, Ms. Grange, Mrs. Williams, Mrs. Malawu-Fort, Dr. Tufton, Mr. McKenzie, Mr. Chuck, Mr. Vaz, Mr. Warmington, Mr. Charles, Mr. Green, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Terry Long, Ms. Smith, Dr. Dunn, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Mr. Main, Mr. Davis, Mr. Witter, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brown-Burke, Dr. Charles, Mr. Chin, Mr. Clark, Mr. Cousins, Ms. Crawford, Ms. Daly, Ms. Davis, Mr. Golding, Mr. Graham, Dr. Guy, Ms. Hamilton, Ms. Hannah, Mr. Henriquez, Mr. Henry, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Lawrence, Miss Lee, Mr. Miller, Mr. Montague, Miss Morrison, Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Paulwell, present. Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Green, Mr. Siblist, Mr. Slowly, Mrs. Vaz, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Wright.
Let us go to the agenda.
This afternoon, as usual, it is my privilege and the pleasure to welcome all members of the House and our guests to the sitting of the House this afternoon, when we will continue the presentation, the sectoral presentation, when the Minister of Health, the Honorable Christopher Tufton, will make his presentation. With us this afternoon are some very special guests. I will start with the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health and Wellness, Mr. Dunstan Bryan, Dr. Jacqueline Biseso Mackenzie, Chief Medical Officer from the Ministry of Health and Wellness, Mr. Ricardo Perez Cuevas, International American Development Bank Country Rep, Miss Olga Iza, I hate to pronounce the name wrong, Iza, who is the new country representative for UNICEF, Mr. Timothy Johnson, World Bank representative, PWR Ian Stain, PAHO representative, Gail Richardson, the World Bank representative. I see persons from St. Anne who are here with us, and the way the light shines, I can't make out all the faces, but I think I see Dr. Ernest Madu of the Heart Institute here with us this afternoon too. And I want to welcome everyone to this evening's presentation. And I feel sure that within seconds, our presenter will enter the room and we will be hearing from him. Members of Parliament, welcome you all to the sitting of the House. I also want to welcome those joining us online by the various social media platforms. We're delighted to have you, and we trust this will prove to be an informative evening. As I said yesterday, without health, we're nothing. Our health is our wealth, so we're all interested in what it is that the Ministry of Health has been doing and plans to do for our health. So, House Leader, over to you. Are we going through? Statements by ministers, announcements.
Laid on the table of the House today are the following. Integrity Commission reports in the investigation into the failure of the following employees of the Transport Authority to file statutory declarations with the Integrity Commission. Ms. Rochelle Hard, Mrs. Marlene Bailey Thompson, Ms. Krista Morrison, Ms. Kimon May, Ms. Karen McPherson, Ms. Jodianne Nelson Mitchell, Ms. Cecilia Dobson, Kelesia Dobson, Miss Christine Campbell Buckridge, Mrs. Heather Williams Grinley, Miss Osborne Brown, Mr. Lloyd Boyne, Mr. Winston Morris, Mr. John Greaves, Mr. Javon Robinson, Mr. Craig Brown. Integrity Commission report on investigation concerning the allegations of breaches of the Corruption Prevention Act, the Customs Act, and the Integrity Commission Act by Councillor Mr. Lambert Weir of the St. Anne Municipal Corporation. Corrigendum to page 16 of the Ministry Paper number 46 of 2023 and tabled in the House of Representatives on Tuesday, May 2, 2023 regarding Annual Performance Report 2022-23 from the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries. And the Auditor General's Department Certified Appropriation Account for Head 28,023 recurrent for the Court of Appeal for the years 2016-2017.
the Senate. Petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move to introduce and have read the first time a bill shortly entitled the Independent Commission of Investigations Amendment Act 2023.
Questions and answers to questions. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to sittings of the House. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the first reading of a bill shortly entitled the Independent Commission of Investigation Amendment Act 2023.
Madam Speaker, a bill shortly entitled the Independent Commission of Investigations Amendment Act 2023 read the first time.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice of second reading of the bill.
Madam Speaker, I ask for the recommittal of announcement. Thank you.
Members, the question before the House is that we have the recommittal of the item announcements. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Announcements.
Ruling of the Integrity Commission ruling reinvestigation in the failure of the following employees of the Transport Authority failure to file statutory deductions with the Integrity Commission. Ms. Rochelle Heard, Mrs. Marlene Bailey Thompson, Ms. Krista Morrison, Ms. Kimon May, Ms. Karen McPherson, Mrs. Jody Nelson Mitchell, Mrs. Kelsia Dobson, Mrs. Christine Campbell Buckridge, Mrs. Heather Williams Greenlee, Mr. Osborne Brown, Mr. Lloyd Bowen, Mr. Winston Morrison, Mr. John Greaves, Mr. Javon Robinson, and Mr. Craig Brown. Also, Integrity Commission's ruling regarding investigation on the report concerning allegations of breaches of the Corruption Prevention Act, the Customs Act, and the Integrity Commission Act by Councillor Mr. Lambert Weir of the St. Anne Municipal Corporation.
House Leader, could you permit me, in my welcoming remarks, I'm not sure because the way the light shines directly, I'm wondering if I'm seeing the CEO of the National Health Fund, Mr. Everton Anderson. I feel very certain that I'm looking at somebody who has his face and not, and also the acting chairman of the National Health Fund, Mr. Darling. I'm not sure that I'm seeing clearly. If you are there, I would like to welcome you to the sitting of the House. And I also want to welcome on your behalf Dr. Tufton, who has arrived for the presentation. So we're on to public business.
Madam Speaker, just in time. Oh, Madam Speaker, today it is our intention to continue the sectoral debate. The Minister of Health and Wellness, Member of Parliament for St. Catherine, West Central, will be our only speaker today. The floor will be his today, Madam Speaker. And I ask you at this point to invite the Minister to begin his presentation.
So, members, we're now at public business. Before I invite you, Minister, to make your presentation, I noticed that the House Leader said, the floor is yours today. It's, Minister, I noticed the House Leader said the floor is yours today. The floor is not so large, so we're asking you to speak well and condense as much as you can this afternoon. And with those opening remarks, I invite you to make your presentation.
Is this on? Are all the mics on? Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And I will certainly do my best to condense. But in the words of the songwriter, so much things to say right now in public health, and I crave your indulgence and the indulgence of my colleagues and those looking on. Madam Speaker, I would like to first of all, thank the Almighty for his guidance and protection during my tenure in this office, my family for their ongoing support, the health and wellness team led by my colleague, Minister of State, and the Permanent Secretary and the Chief Medical Officer, and the 23,000 healthcare workers, the Most Honorable Prime Minister Andrew Holness, and this administration, including my cabinet ministers, our partners, too many to name right now, my constituents of St. Catherine West Central, who continue to give support, and of course the Jamaican people. Madam Speaker, last year I defined the state of public health in the context of the waning impact of the COVID-19 virus, and also the longer-term impact of a global pandemic that has disrupted all our lives and challenged our capacity as a public health to respond. Today, while COVID-19 is not over, the impact of the pandemic on our daily lives has diminished significantly, and we are moving to a state of recovery of which we all, Madam Speaker, can be proud. Significantly, fewer Jamaicans are being hospitalized, and even fewer persons are dying from the disease. From our last weekly surveillance report, 46 Jamaicans reported COVID-19 infection compared to approximately 9,801 at the peak week of the pandemic in January 2022. We regret, of course, Madam Speaker, that we have had 28 deaths during this period up to April 25th, 2023. But you know, Madam Speaker, when we compare how we have done, when we examine all the critical parameters, the reality is that we have done well. We have done well on perhaps the most critical variable, Madam Speaker, and a table should come up on the screen now showing a comparison of the mortality rates, because ultimately it's about saving lives. And if you look at deaths per 100,000 population, Madam Speaker, Jamaica, when compared to countries like the US, the United Kingdom, Italy, Trinidad and Tobago, St. Lucia, Bahamas, Barbados, Guyana, Antigua, Barbuda, Canada, Jamaica, on a per capita per 100,000 mortality rate, has done better than all of those countries, Madam Speaker. I'm sorry you're not seeing the table. 118.7 deaths per 100,000 population for Jamaica. The US was 341, UK 325, Italy 311, and I could go on and on. And so, for COVID deaths. And so, Madam Speaker, while I hear sometimes, and I think it's important for public commentary and debate around these issues, it is a national important issue, to criticize us as failing because of low vaccination rates, and that is a concern. The reality is, when it came to saving lives, we did better than most, and it's something that we should all be proud of. Madam Speaker, Jamaica was among the first countries to develop and implement a pandemic response plan, including increasing the human resources by some 2,000 healthcare workers, expand bed capacity by 10%, by over 400 beds, increase the amount of critical equipment necessary for delivery of healthcare, including oxygen delivery systems, high flow delivery, high dependency and intensive care services, expand lab capacity for PCR and antigen testing and genomic sequencing. Overall, therefore, despite the threats and the challenges of COVID, we have been able to strengthen our health system. Now, I raise this because the reality is COVID has been the dominant talking point over the past number of years, and rightfully so. But I raise it to make an important point on behalf of the more than 23,000 public health team members that have represented the response, the primary response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Too often, Madam Speaker, we discuss our road to recovery with reference to the COVID-19 virus as the obvious source of our economic and social woes, without distinguishing the successful management of the pandemic and the work of our health team as part of the core reason for our economic and social recovery. This, Madam Speaker, is a disservice to those who have sacrificed on behalf of the Jamaican people and for the resumption of life as we know it. We should all applaud and share, I believe, in the successes of our economic recovery and life as we know it, but we must never forget the sacrifices and efficient response of the COVID-19 management team. Countries that were late or too gradual, too extreme in their responses are still feeling the brunt of trying to restart their society. Not so here. Long before the virus came to our shores on March 10, 2020, we managed the protection of our borders. We managed the spread of the disease within the country, utilizing tried, tested, and proven public health measures in contact tracing and shielding of the most vulnerable. We managed our communication and stakeholder engagement, and we managed resources, Madam Speaker. Yes, we managed the resources that we You know, Madam Speaker, as I listen, and I have to listen, to the public commentary over time around the COVID expenditure. And I think it is important. It's an important part of our democracy that we must embrace. So I'm not being critical of a process. But I believe I reserve the right to form a judgment. And I have to conclude, Madam Speaker, that it may be that this generation will never appreciate sufficiently the extent of the threat that we face and the response that was required, more often than not, learning on the job, which meant life or death in most cases. And as leaders, I suspect we have to accept that. And we hope that if not this generation, future generation will appreciate it. Now, I am prepared to say part of that reason why some of the positions in officialdom or otherwise have been taken around COVID expenditure is because of the trust deficit in our society. And there is a trust deficit, and it's something that probably we need to work on here. But the reality is, Madam Speaker, that Jamaica stands stronger because of what we collectively did during these very difficult years and very difficult decisions that we made. We must never forget the commitment of the Jamaican people to the fight against COVID-19 and the heroes that emerged from the health system, those who stood at the forefront and those who paid the ultimate price so that today, Madam Speaker, we can bring our society back from the brink. We must celebrate them. Those efforts of our healthcare workers, this administration, and the entire government and the Jamaican people can be proud. Madam Speaker, COVID-19 has impacted not only the economies of the world, but also the psychosocial environment in which we all operate. It is not lost on me the seeming change in the mental wellness of the population, and that the health profile of the population in terms of NCDs is moving in the wrong direction on many fronts, and I'll come back to that. Our health system must respond to these new and emerging challenges. We note the many studies on long COVID, which are defined by the World Health Organization as a set of symptoms experienced by individuals who have been infected with COVID-19. The most common symptom of long COVID includes shortness of breath, cognitive dysfunction, which people call brain fog, as well as fatigue. The WHO, however, tells us that there have been more than 200 symptoms reported in patients, Madam Speaker. The Ministry has embarked on a process guided by the work of our multilateral partners to tracking and responding to the long COVID phenomenon. And more will be said on this, Madam Speaker. However, I would like to use this opportunity to say to Jamaicans who have been impacted by the COVID-19 virus, if you feel ill and make that connection, see your health center or doctor for more assessment as we attempt to confront this lingering impact of the COVID-19 virus. Madam Speaker, after 7 years, this past April, on this particular job as Portfolio Minister, under the stewardship of Andrew Holness and this administration, I think it is fair that Jamaicans ask, from wherever they are from, the question as to what have we done in public health and how have the people benefited. And we mustn't resist or push back on the people's right to inquire and to probe. And so I took the opportunity to use this occasion, Madam Speaker, to give a scorecard or work in progress of some of the things that we have done in public health, given that we have been there long enough, not just to manage crises, but to make a positive change. Madam Speaker, I start with Code Care. This initiative of clearing up the backlog of elective surgeries, partly due to the COVID-19 pandemic, has seen over 950 surgeries taking place through public-private partnerships, involving 8 private hospitals, short-term visiting medical missions, primarily comprising operating theatre nurses from the diaspora, and special overtime sessions by our local surgery teams. Despite some doubts about this program, Madam Speaker, to date, some 950 Jamaicans who have been waiting, in some instances as long as 6 years, for a surgical procedure have benefited under the Code Care program, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, despite the doubts, we have demonstrated that through creative thinking and determination, we can join forces through a collaborative health team to provide relief to hundreds of Jamaicans who were suffering in silence or suffering aloud for years, waiting on these badly needed surgeries. Like, Melissa Gale, who is 40 years old from Hanover, who told me that for 3 years, she was scheduled to do surgery for fibroids, suffering each month, excessive bleeding, can't go to work, downtime, pain and suffering. Well, under Code Care, she got her badly needed surgery, and she has said thanks, and she's happy. 950 other Jamaicans benefit from that. I would like to recognize, Madam Speaker, I'd like to recognize the team at the ministry who worked to reduce our surgery backlog, and particularly those who embraced the concept from the start, because there was some resistance. I want to recognize in particular Dr. Delroy Frey, clinical coordinator at the Cornwall Regional Hospital, a healthcare hero who has given 38 years to save lives and now sits as an example not just of the status quo, which he could easily do, having been a 38-year veteran, but an example of change, because change was necessary to solve a particular problem on hand. We salute Dr. Frey as a symbol of our healthcare efforts, and he's here with us, and we welcome him in this house, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Code Care project has several arms, including the procurement of equipment and supplies and repair to vital infrastructure. I know our surgeons in our public health system were concerned because they felt that we were shifting resources to the private as opposed to fixing the public. And I know questions have been raised around that. I say, I understand the concerns, but we are working to repair operating theatres in our public system, 15 operating theatres at a cost of some $750 million, which has been allocated, Madam Speaker. And the work has been done. We are now securing, through the procurement process, the completion of that process. And I say to those who are concerned, with time, we will repair spending that $750 million. In the meantime, Madam Speaker, Code Care will continue into the next year, given that we have only achieved 50% of our target, and we will seek to do another 1,000 surgeries in this financial year. We are catering to the concerns of Jamaicans and those who need it most. Madam Speaker, public health is going digital. Yes. And this is not an announcement. It's not just talk. It's action on the ground. I'm giving a work in progress with $2 billion Jamaican dollars that has already been committed, an expenditure that has started. Our game-changing digitization of the health system has started with 754 million contracts signed for an implementation period of 18 months and support services of 15 years, support services being critical. This year, we'll continue the implementation of 15 health centers and the full rollout of electronic health record system in these facilities by early 2024. We have also signed and started work, a contract valued at $1.26 billion with Cable and Wireless, and we'll see 105 health centers across the island equipped with ICT infrastructure to include network and cabling for internet and Wi-Fi connections, Madam Speaker. These activities are a precursor to the implementation of the rollout of the electronic health record solution in these facilities. What does this mean, Madam Speaker, for patient care? Because we work, we implement for a reason. It's really about the people. It means, Madam Speaker, shorter transaction time, so less wait, because patient files are not kept in a hard copy file somewhere that sometimes can't be found. It means telemedicine, serving remote areas over long distances where specialists are not available. Madam Speaker, we are creating a modern digital health system for the benefit of the Jamaican people. That's transformation, and the work is taking place. Madam Speaker, we have continued our public-private partnerships with the diagnostic services, CT scan, MRIs, and X-rays. Yes. Up to 120,000 procedures carried out to improve the lives of thousands of Jamaicans, primarily poor Jamaicans. Now, MPs can relate to this, Madam Speaker. There was a time when you have a constituent who wanted a CT scan, or CDF, and the public health system, the hospital, didn't have one, and they would come to the MP's office asking for it to be paid for. Because what the doctor used to do is write up a little pink form and send them to do the test to come back. Well, 120,000 such procedures have been done over the last 2 years, paid for at a cost of approximately $3 billion by the government through the public-private partnership outsourcing system. There are those who feel that outsourcing these life-saving procedures robs the public health system of its ability to provide similar services. Madam Speaker, let me be frank and provide context. We were not providing these services adequately in the first place. There was already a gap, and a huge gap. And guess who were the ones who were the victims of this? Poor Jamaicans who couldn't afford it in the private space. And therefore, we had to take action, Madam Speaker, to fix the problem. Waiting in pain, clogging hospital beds, waiting until they could get money from their neighbor, their friend, their MP, their relatives abroad in order to do it privately. Some even died waiting. That's the reality. Let's look at the numbers, Madam Speaker. The public health system has approximately demand of over 500,000 radiological procedures each year. I asked for an audit, and this is why we had to do this, as a response to a problem that we had. I asked for an audit to be done to determine the state of readiness of our diagnostic equipment service quality, and the numbers were concerning. Specifically, the report found that of the total number of equipment assessed, 23% were at the end of their life stage, needed to be replaced immediately. 53% were either fairly functional or non-functional, and over 80% needed servicing or parts. Many were just placed in a corner. Worse, Madam Speaker, the in-house servicing of these equipment was very lacking. In other words, neither the expertise or the regularity of servicing, which meant that they were suboptimal in many cases. Madam Speaker, the consequences of this were suffering Jamaicans wanting to diagnose their problems for treatment who could not get that treatment. And let me be clear, just in case anybody has any ideas as to how this started. The report suggests that this didn't start with this administration. In fact, the report is saying that's a problem we inherited that we have decided to fix on this side, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, we had to look at revamping the process, and we wanted to do two things as part of our solving the problem. Firstly, we had to save lives. That was the ultimate first priority, by reducing the backlog through this PPP arrangement. And this is how the 120,000 procedures were done. Imagine the misery index if we never had these facilities available. Some of these people would still be waiting, Madam Speaker. But secondly, developing a more robust repair and maintenance schedule to ensure that we get value for money from the government's significant investment in diagnostic equipment. It includes a policy towards procurement to support extended service guarantees, training of local personnel for routine maintenance, and the option to lease rather than purchase, Madam Speaker. And we have decided to look at the lease option very, very carefully. In fact, we have decided to go with that. And why? Because with leasing comes a uniformity of approach of procuring the services, similar machinery, comes servicing, and comes a realistic depreciation of those equipment so that they can be replaced, so we get the optimal value of those machines. As a consequence, Madam Speaker, I'm happy to announce that the Ministry has launched a tender process for the leasing of over 49 pieces of equipment to include MRI machines, CT machines, and ultrasound machines. The tender will require the management and maintenance under a capital lease agreement for 9 CT scan machines, 4 MRI machines, as well as 36 fixed and mobile ultrasound machines. This, Madam Speaker, will be the first time that the Ministry has embarked on a comprehensive, holistic approach to diagnostic services in the public health system. And this is happening as we speak. It's not just an announcement. There's action on the ground. Now, we know that we have gaps because we don't have the institutional knowledge around leasing. What have we done, therefore? We have sought the assistance of the Inter-American Development Bank to provide the technical support as we move the process forward, Madam Speaker. The process will take some time between procurement and implementation, maybe a year or more. As a consequence, we will continue the public-private partnership for outsourcing of diagnostic services because the people of Jamaica needs it, particularly the poor people of Jamaica who cannot afford to purchase in the private space. Madam Speaker, as I proceed with the work in progress, I want to remind us that we tabled last year a primary healthcare reform document. Today I'm pleased to lay on the table of this House, Madam Speaker, a human resource for healthcare clinician workforce document. Now, this is a fairly comprehensive document, Madam Speaker, the result of a lot of work over the last year. And simply put, what this means is that the public health ecosystem, infrastructure, between the work that we have done thinking futuristically and the compensation review arrangement will see an additional 2,000 doctors having permanent posts established in public health over the next year or so. What are the numbers, Madam Speaker? Permanent posts as opposed to short-term contracts for 789 doctors currently in the system. So we're moving from temporary to permanent, more job security. New posts of over 1,112 doctors to be filled over time, and 140 posts that were established to support the response to the COVID-19 pandemic. That's over 2,000 permanent posts to impact, Madam Speaker, service quality for the people of Jamaica. What that means: less patient to doctor ratio, more specialists in the system, more doctors at the primary community health care, including and also in the hospitals. When we have more doctors, Madam Speaker, it means that patients will get better care. This government cares about those who go to the public health system. And Madam Speaker, for the other categories of work, don't worry. We're working on nurses, we're working on the other healthcare categories, and we'll announce those in due course. I turn quickly as part of our work in progress to infrastructure. This year, the Ministry has provided a capital budget of $6.43 billion, 31% increase in what has been provided for financial year 2022-23. We have more money to spend on our capital budget, Madam Speaker. Let's look at the numbers. Western Child and Adolescent Hospital is now on its 5th floor. It's building, it's going up. I'm sorry, we seem to have some issues with the screen. Otherwise, you would have seen it on the monitors. That is work in progress, Madam Speaker. We have spent some, through the grant from the Chinese government, some $450 million, and we are slated for completion in 2025. When completed, the facility will boast the only adolescent hospital in the English-speaking Caribbean and the second pediatric facility in the island. The Spanish Town Hospital, long overdue for major overhaul, Madam Speaker, is scheduled to break ground on July 2023 at a contract price of some $6.4 billion to be spent over the next 2 years, Madam Speaker. Not an announcement. The work has started. We have almost completed the procurement process. This state-of-the-art 7-story, 100-bed facility will boast 7 operating theaters, a new accident and emergency center, a new pharmacy, several other support services, including lab and other diagnostics services. Under these investments, the Spanish Town Hospital will see services expanded in cardiology, oncology, hematology, ophthalmology, and ENT, Madam Speaker. We will see a new Spanish Town Hospital for the people of St. Catherine and its environs. This is not just talk, Madam Speaker, this is action on the ground. Madam Speaker, we all know about Cornwall Regional Hospital, and I'm sure my colleague on the other side, when he gets a chance to speak, will tell us even more. Not necessarily everything that is said is what is, but nevertheless, Madam Speaker, we are, and I'm a lot more confident that we are now in the final stages of the completion of the Cornwall Regional Hospital, and it will be newer, bigger, and better. Final phase will commence in a month or two. There's a $14 billion expenditure associated with that, and that means the internals, and we expect that we will begin to reoccupy the main building by the end of this year, right through the year of 2024. But Madam Speaker, beyond all of that work, that busyness, not just in talking, but in doing on the ground for the people of Jamaica, there are a number of infrastructure projects that go unnoticed yet are making a big impact on the quality of patient care. And we must recognize it. We must recognize it. In particular, at the primary health care level. These are stories that focus on improvements in patient waiting areas and staff facilities, an addition of basic equipment for improved patient response. These are stories that portray the benefits of partnerships in improving healthcare delivery. Madam Speaker, since 2018, over 100 health facilities have been significantly benefited from investment right across the island at an approximate cost of some $4.4 billion to right-size and renew primary health care. I want to use the opportunity because this has been a big partnership. And public health is about partnership. No man stands alone. COVID has taught us that. No matter how powerful you are as a country or as an individual, no matter how much money you have, health is not a one-man thing. You're going to be worse off. Which is why sometimes I appreciate the comment from my colleague on opposite, because sometimes he says the right things. Not all the time, but sometimes. I'm giving him that. Madam Speaker, I want to use the opportunity to thank the National Health Fund, the Chase Fund, the Tourism Enhancement Fund, the Pan American Health Organization, the European Union, USAID, UNICEF, the Rotary Club, Food for the Poor, various private sector and other interests, the IDB, big player, big partner, for the collaboration on getting these 100 health centers in the communities upgraded in one form or another, Madam Speaker. I particularly am proud of the Adopter Clinic program, which was launched in 2017 to help coordinate and direct support of our health system by persons primarily in the diaspora, but also in corporate Jamaica. You know, since that program was launched, the Adopter Clinic, we have had 43 adoptions. That's a lot.
Nice.
43 health centers, some of them in some parts of the world of the country that some people would forget, right? But they're serving people, adopted by our friends and family members in the diaspora or corporate, and 200 million Jamaican dollars committed by those individuals to adopt those health centers. I want to thank Mr. Cephas and the Health Foundation for managing this process, because they have done a good job. Mr. Courtney Cephas. Madam Speaker, I have to talk about the University Hospital to reinforce the fact that we're not just talking.
Action.
Because, you know, there's a lot of talk going on. The environment is toxic in so many ways. You know, I say toxic Twitter, not because I don't use it, but because sometimes when I see something said on it, because everybody's an expert. Everybody's an expert. And guess what? I love the need to express yourself. So I'm not suggesting we shouldn't, but I'm also supporting truth. And as the main player for public health, I have to set the record straight. Madam Speaker, as a continuation of the work of the improvement of the University Hospital of the West Indies, $300 million has been provided in this year's budget to continue that work, which has been commissioned for the construction and rehabilitation of the facility. We have gone to tender. I understand that that process will be completed soon for reworking the ring road, expanding it, clearing the site for a greenfield building valued at some $30 million, a 6-story building, to renew and restore the University Hospital of the West Indies. Madam Speaker, we will, this administration, rebuild and retrofit the University Hospital of the West Indies. So, Madam Speaker, when you summarize the expenditure, you're talking about 27 billion Jamaican dollars, or US 178 million. Cornwall Regional, 14 billion left to be spent. Western Children Adolescent, 5 billion left to be spent. Spanish Town, 7 billion to be spent. UHWI, 3 billion to be spent. Madam Speaker, this is not talk. This government is working to build public health infrastructure like no other government before since independence. And we don't talk about the IDB, 10 health centers, the EU support for that. We haven't spoken about the work that continues with NHF, with Chase and other such areas. Now, Madam Speaker, I am proud of the work in progress.
Yes.
I am proud of the support. I am proud of the support of the Prime Minister Andrew Holness and the Cabinet of Jamaica and my parliamentary colleagues. And if they are honest with themselves, they'll be proud too. Because they have benefited in many different ways. And so, yes, I know you're proud too. I know you're proud too. I have had many discussions in private quarters, and I know that they are proud. Right, member? The public health expansion that has taken place. Madam Speaker, I want to ask your indulgence and a little focus on a point I want to raise, which is very important. And, Madam Speaker, this is not a happy topic. It's not a happy topic, but it makes a big point. You know, in 2020, Madam Speaker, some 22,000 deaths were recorded, the mortality figures in Jamaica, 22,022 to be exact. Diabetes was the most frequent underlying cause of death at 13%, followed by stroke, 11%, hypertension, 8%, heart disease, like heart attacks, 8%, and assault or violence or intentional injury, 4%. Importantly, Madam Speaker, lifestyle diseases or NCDs were the cause of death for some 16,918 individuals, almost 8 out of every 10 Jamaican or persons living here that died was as a result of how we live, how we interact with our environment, what we consume, lack of exercise, lack of rest, lifestyle. We call it non-communicable diseases. And Madam Speaker, there's a table in the text that you will see that shows the breakout of those numbers and the cause of mortality. And this is where I think it's important for us to assess, and I want to thank our EPI unit led by Dr. Webster Carr for helping me to interrogate these numbers to get some answers as to where we're headed and what we need to do. When we analyze the deaths occurring in persons before their 75th birthday, which is considered the sort of average life expectancy in Jamaica today, women living 3 or 4 years more than men, we found, Madam Speaker, that some 12,747 or 59% of persons who died in 2020 died before the age of 75. That's almost 60%. But worse, more concerning, I should say, this is a 19% increase in the period of it. Let me back up. This represents when you calculate the life years lost. So let's assume that 75 is the average. If someone lives to 70, we calculate 5 life years lost. And we do that for all who die before 75, because 75 is the average life expectancy. When we calculated the life years lost in the year 2020, what we found that as a country, we had some 296,000 life years lost because of what I classify as premature mortality, premature death. But worse, Madam Speaker, and this is the point, it represents a 19% increase in the potential life years lost a decade ago, 10 years ago. In other words, Madam Speaker, and simply put, Jamaicans are dying younger. That's what the data says. Jamaicans are dying younger. In 2020, Madam Speaker, lifestyle diseases were the cause of 144,000 approximately life years lost, representing a 30% increase in potential years of life lost when compared again to a decade before, Madam Speaker. Now, Madam Speaker, what this is saying in simple terms, and I don't want to get too overcomplicated because I want Jamaica to understand, every Jamaican. What is clear is that Jamaicans are seeking health services at a younger age, and that Jamaicans are dying at a younger age. And they are dying primarily from lifestyle-related diseases. Let me make the connection, Madam Speaker, with some examples. In 2017, 1 in 3 women aged 15 years and older had never had a pap smear, while greater than 2/3 of women have never had a mammogram. 28% of Jamaican men aged 40 and older have never done a digital rectal exam, for all sorts of reasons that we are aware of. In a study exploring health-seeking behavior of older males, it was found that 2/3 of participants had not visited a doctor or health facility in the last year, only 35% of participants had ever done a prostate exam. Giving you some examples, Madam Speaker. So let's roll that in to one's happiness, earning capacity, quality of life, longevity of life. Madam Speaker, a man who loses a leg or an arm from complications due to diabetes at 50 years old could likely lose up to 70% of his earning capacity. Depending on his profession, the loss of sight due to diabetic retinopathy is likely to immobilize his household and cause significant pressures on the family. Madam Speaker, these are real people that you can attach to these numbers. This is the real impact of morbidity due to preventable diseases. I am saying to us here in this house and to Jamaica, we have to do more on prevention. Yes, yes. It goes without saying. The data supports it. Last year, I spoke about the principle of primordial prevention. While we have made some progress in areas such as trans fat elimination, school nutrition policy, we still have work to do in the area of prevention as a means of controlling costs to our health budget. But even more importantly, reducing in-health and premature mortality, Madam Speaker, requires a lot more work. In essence, we need to know our numbers. Yes. And as a first step to managing and preventing premature illness and mortality. To address this premature mortality, Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Health has been working on developing a life stage approach to health promotion and prevention to impact personal and collective health care. From as early as conception, expectant mothers and child must be given guidance around best practices for pre- and postnatal care. Yes. Through the various stages of growth and development. The health system must facilitate persons making informed choices about their health, starting in primary care to support lifestyle practices to avoid or reduce premature mortality and improve the best health outcome in each citizen. This is all captured, Madam Speaker, in the 2030 vision, but for us in public health, it has implications for how we structure our health care, and we have been working on it strategically. Madam Speaker, we're not just responding to crisis. We're building buildings, we're providing more doctors, but we're also strategically planning. And it's not an easy task, but we're committed to the task. So, Madam Speaker, this year, given the data that I've given about people dying younger, Jamaicans, largely from lifestyle-related diseases, we will focus on a critical component of prevention of ill health and hopefully influencing healthy lifestyle. I introduce to you our Know Your Numbers Healthy Lifestyle Initiative. Madam Speaker, this is a practical response to the biggest health crisis we face today, lifestyle diseases and premature mortality. So, too many Jamaicans are walking sick and they do not know until them tumble down. Yes. A heart attack, a stroke, that's just the reality. And let me give you some more numbers, why you need to know your numbers. 236,000 or 9% of the population have diabetes, according to studies that are done locally. Only 106,000 are aware of their status. Furthermore, 95,000 approximately have one or more complications related to diabetes. And these complications are predictably, based on the expert advice, likely to lead to amputation, chronic kidney disease, or heart attack. Huh? Okay, my colleague over there says erectile dysfunction. He has a lot of knowledge. He's a medical doctor. Oh, he's a medical doctor. That's why he has a lot of knowledge of these things. Let me correct it, right?
That's a good information.
Madam Speaker, it is of note that approximately 679,000, or a quarter of all Jamaicans, have hypertension, with only about 54% or 374,000 being aware that they have hypertension. 300,000 of us don't know that we have high blood pressure. One of the leading causes of stroke. I'm talking about knowing your numbers. And I'm hoping that Jamaica is following, because we have to do something about health education. People must know their numbers. These statistics are alarming, as knowing your basic health information, Madam Speaker, is critical as a first step to taking personal responsibility. What is your blood pressure? When last have you checked? What is your blood sugar numbers? What is your body mass index, or what is your HIV status? These are questions to which every Jamaican should have at least an idea, if not a definite number. Madam Speaker, here's another interesting number. An estimated 75% of Jamaicans could avoid a stroke if they are aware of the warning signs through screening and took corrective action. This is called modifiable risk factors in the clinical dictionary. So let me tell you about stroke, because I had the reason to study the numbers for a conference I attended. In 2020, almost 7,500 Jamaicans had a stroke. 2,400 died. The rest, for the most part, had a disability. They needed therapy. They had to stop from work. They had to have somebody taking care of them. 7,400 plus, almost 7,500. I hope it makes the point, Madam Speaker, why we need to know that our blood pressure is high and why we need to take action early. John, for example, to be more simplistic, who has high blood pressure and continues to drink his half cue of white rum. Yeah, right. Well, his white rum, let me say his alcohol consumption. Just to be all inclusive, his alcohol consumption. And to eat his corn pork every evening. And decide not to exercise. Want to walk around the park. And every day is the same thing. And he has hypertension and he doesn't know. Inevitably, is going to end up.
No, we don't want that. Madam Speaker,
to finish.
I now ask that the Minister's time for speaking be extended. By 15 minutes.
Members, the question is that the Minister's time be extended by 15 minutes to allow him to complete his presentation. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And remember, I did start by saying so many things to say. But I also said yesterday that I have goodies in the back for those who give support. For a slightly extra run, and it will be for both sides, don't worry. So, Madam Speaker, I'm saying that John, who could be Chris, who could be Juliet, who could be Rhoda, it could be anybody who has this condition based on lifestyle practice. It is almost inevitable where they're going to end up. And if you pull that back to the numbers of those dying 75 years or younger, which is an increasing rate, it means that we're really going in the wrong direction.
Yes.
We're losing our countrymen, our fellow men, our brothers and sisters, our children, our mothers, fathers, when we could have extended their lives and their quality of life, if they knew their numbers, which is why it's important. So, Madam Speaker, what does Know Your Numbers mean as an initiative that we will focus on? First of all, it's about getting Jamaicans to screen at least once each year to know their health status and what they need to do to modify their behavior to reduce illness and premature mortality. We're giving people a chance. We can't force you, but we want to help you. That's very important. Our target is to do 500,000 screening tests done this year, 2023-24. This is to provide Jamaicans with the opportunity to know what they are vulnerable to, what they need to do to correct this life, and what lifestyle changes to make. To achieve this, we intend to bolster offerings of health checks and promote health screening in our hospitals and clinics across the country. Screening will become routine operating procedure through our primary reform program, in particular our life stage approach, which I spoke to earlier. This means once you enter a health facility, you're going to be given the opportunity for screening. And we really hope that Jamaicans take up the offer. We can't force you, but we're going to encourage it. Madam Speaker, the Ministry through the regional health authorities will plan to, on how to execute this, not only in our health institutions, but in our communities by targeting vulnerable populations, people living in remote areas, underserved areas. Madam Speaker, we are going to be repurposing our COVID buses, mobile buses, to know your numbers buses. And we're going to dispatch them out into the community. And we're going to pop up everywhere. It might be on a football field. It might be at a church. It might be in South Trelawney, where you have the best yam that grows anywhere in Jamaica, Madam Speaker. Well, you're on the border, so you share the credit, right? But we're going to pop up to provide these health screening services. Madam Speaker, what are the services? Services will include body mass index, hypertension, diabetes, vision, cholesterol, HIV, and syphilis. Expanded services, because there'll be a referral. So if your numbers are out of whack, the doctor may say you need to do a follow-up set of services. Great. And that could include ECG, prostate, breast or prostate cancer, cervical cancer, colorectal cancer, dementia, frailty, and immunization. In addition to clinics and health centers, we'll be taking screening, as I said, to the community through our mobile units. We're going to be pushing partnerships with the faith-based community. We're going to be taking screening to corporate Jamaica. You know, one of the things that employers need to appreciate more is that their worker is their best asset, and they must take more interest in the health and the lifestyle of their workers. Nothing is wrong with giving your worker time off to go do a medical check, or to making the opportunity to give them that opportunity. And we're going to be pushing that, Madam Speaker, as a big part of the thing, of this approach. Madam Speaker, MPs will also be engaged, just to say. We're offering $1 million to every member of Parliament to do at least 2 health screening exercises during the course of this year, Madam Speaker. But we're going to do more on the Know Your Numbers campaign. Madam Speaker, I want to introduce a discount card.
Love it.
Discount card that will be introduced, courtesy of the NHF, which will incentivize persons who do screening. In essence, you do a health check, you're going to get points on this card, and you can redeem it at your favorite supermarket, or should I say participating supermarket, gas station, pharmacy, because we've reached a stage where we think it makes sense to not just say what is right, but to encourage what is right, Madam Speaker. More will be said about this when they don't do the conclusion. The value will be a function of how many health screening exercises you do. So like you, Delroy, once you do your prostate exam. I did it already. Oh, you did it already? Well, you have missed the points that will be assigned to that. Whatever test you do, you will points will go on the card, and that card will be redeemed for a discount in the participating locations. We'll say more about it in the month to come. Madam Speaker, importantly, the program will feature a pathway to care and ensure that once diagnosed with any chronic illness, or bringing it right through to the end, persons can immediately be referred to treatment to manage the condition. A referral pathway for core screening services has been developed by the team in the ministry, will be circulated to all regional health authorities, or has been, to ensure the ethical risks associated with this campaign are sufficiently managed. So, Madam Speaker, we're not going to stop by saying you're diagnosed or you're vulnerable with this. We're going to say this is your path to recovery and give you guidance. Now, what it means is that we're going to have more demand on the health system. And we have to prepare for the demand on the health system. But we believe in longevity and quality of life and serving the people of Jamaica as a first priority. Madam Speaker, know your numbers. Remember that terminology. You're going to hear a lot about it. And remind all of Jamaica that we're really promoting healthy living. It's a lifestyle that we're promoting. Madam Speaker, I turn to another area. As has been said before, one of the consequences of chronic disease within a high trauma society is the number of Jamaicans who have lost limbs, hands and feet due to trauma or chronic diseases. You know, Madam Speaker, there are about 300 persons, I'm told, by the Disabilities Association who lose limb each year 80% of those are diabetics because of diabetes. Madam Speaker, we have to find a way to reintegrate these individuals because in losing a limb, Madam Speaker, you lose your capacity to function in many ways. In a 2019 study published by the National Library of Medicine, National Center for Biotechnology Information, it was found that in amputees, and I'm quoting now, socially, 90% of the patients no longer practice leisure activities, and at the economic level, 87% of patients had a decreased monthly income, factors that bear direct correlation to the functional outcome of patients were the level of amputation. Clearly, you lose a limb, you lose an arm, you lose a feet, you can't function the way you would normally function. In other words, Madam Speaker, when persons are impacted by conditions such as diabetes, where they have to remove a limb, there is a direct impact on the quality of life, not just of them, but their family members and the society in general, because more often than not, the society now has to support them. Madam Speaker, let me remind us that the provision of health care is also the provision of wellness. Therefore, we must provide the interventions and strategies to support these challenges. Today, I introduce to you a prosthetic partnership program for persons living with disability. Wow. It's called New Limb, New Life. Great. And Madam Speaker, the ministry will be partnering with the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities to provide prosthesis. Through this collaboration, the ministry will make available $50 million to that entity, who will assess and qualify persons 60 years or younger, persons in their productive years. And we will use this resource to provide prosthesis to support the reintegration of these individuals in society. Madam Speaker, this is a caring government. It's a caring government. We show compassion to those who need a second chance. But let me just say, we're going to use their example as an example to others as why you mustn't get diabetes and why you must know your numbers. It's all related, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to introduce to you, because I don't want anybody to say it's announcement and not action, our first beneficiary of New Limb, New Life. You know, some weeks ago I saw an article in the Jamaica Observer exposing a gentleman by the name of Andrew Nelson, 45-year-old farmer from Clarendon, no legs, pineapple farmer. Yes. He's on the screen there. Yes. And I felt the passion. Yes. First of all, I want to commend him on his industriousness. Jamaica can do, we could do a lot more if we follow the example of Andrew, yes, who has lost both limbs and is still out there toiling and working. Yes, yes. And I had the opportunity to have a discussion, and he was challenged. And while we're developing this program, I say, you know something, Andrew's going to be the first beneficiary. Yeah. Madam Speaker, I am happy to announce that Andrew has already been measured, the legs ordered, and he's here with us in the gallery right now. There he is right there holding up his hand. Madam Speaker, and I know that Andrew is only one individual, but he's an example, yes, and he has volunteered to be an example to promote healthy lifestyle, healthy living. And this government, as a caring government, wants to work with people like Andrew, Madam Speaker. But you know, Madam Speaker, there's another individual that I have to mention in passing. In passing. Some may say he's famous. Some may say he's infamous. It depends on the position you take. So this person had an unfortunate, and I'm serious, unfortunate event on Old Hope Road. Infamous. Going to a place that he likes to frequent, that I have never been to. But I will tell you, he and I have been to the same church. Really? fact, he calls me Brother Chris. But he only does it in private, not when he's on social media. When I'm on social media, he finds all the perceived flaws that I have and promotes them. But nevertheless, the long and short of the story is that Mr. John Polak, and I pulled these pictures from social media, by the way, so I didn't pull it from a private space, had an unfortunate incident, and we reached out, and we provided him with the support. And if you notice him standing strong and firm, he is actually building back stronger. And Madam Speaker, listen, I wanted to invite him, but I was afraid he would have worn that color shirt and that stuff. But Madam Speaker, let me just say that when John says a lot, and I know I'm spending 15 seconds on him, and maybe he doesn't deserve it, but he spends a lot of time on social media. And he's quite toxic about us on this side. But if I had the opportunity to do it over again, I would do it. Yes. I'll do it. Because this government cares about people, even when they don't care too much about us. Right. It's what we define caring as a government. And I want to wish him all the best. Yes. But I just want to encourage him to tone down on some of the inaccuracies that he puts out every day on social media. Madam Speaker, I know. Madam Speaker, the founding principles, and by the way, Madam Speaker, if you notice, half of my 15 minutes was disruption by the other side. Madam Speaker, the founding principles of public health are that it should be holistic, listen carefully, in addressing the mind and the body. That's my philosophy, that's my belief. We're in a battle for good health that is as much about the mind as it is about the physical being. The physical being, including appearances, can motivate confidence and enhance happiness and well-being. How you feel can be influenced by how you look. Appearances, contrary to what some people may think, do matter. Madam Speaker, public health has a duty. We have a duty not just to treat patients, but also ultimately to treat them in a manner that aids their reintegration into society. Yes. In fact, we should help our patients, our clients, to reintegrate stronger and better and more confidently so they can get another opportunity to be productive citizens and lead healthier lives for themselves, their families, their society as a whole. Madam Speaker, I have a pet peeve. Maybe a cliche, but I do have a pet peeve. And let me tell you what that is. I have a pet peeve that I have long wanted to address publicly and do something about. That is in the area of oral health. Oral health. The teeth, the mouth. Where there seems to be a preference in Jamaica. And perhaps sometimes with good reason, for extractions as opposed to preserving permanent teeth. Yes, and it's an unhealthy practice, unhealthy part of our culture that we need to stop, and it's an underserved area. When we extract, particularly poor people's teeth, poor people, particularly when they are in the productive years of their lives,
Madam Speaker, I do not want to show any preference in this house.
But they have teeth too.
Because I do not want the same demands to be made by others. However, Madam Speaker, I now ask Madam Speaker, I now ask that the standing orders be suspended to enable the Minister to continue his presentation and bring it to its conclusion in 15 minutes. Give or take, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Just before I put the question to the House, I just want to say that one good turn deserves another. So as I've listened to you, Minister, it is with great expectation that I'm looking forward to all the advancement reaching the hills of South Trelawney. So with that, the question before the House is that the Minister be given time to complete his presentation, 15 minutes, give or take. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it, Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, for the first time, I literally heard support from that side for what the government is proposing and advancing, which is a good thing. Anyway, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, what I was saying is that when we extract particularly poor people's tooth or teeth, because it's expensive to replace them, particularly in their productive years of life, we might address the pain that is normally the source or cause of their visit to a dental surgeon, but we also restrict their life chances for happiness and economic gain. That's not in keeping with the principles of what we should support. It's about rehabilitation. Solving a sickness is a means to an end. It's about life and happiness and productivity. Madam Speaker, a 35-year-old man without any front teeth, let me be very blunt, is likely to be less employable and less likely to find the ideal partner in life, either in the economic sphere or the social sphere, than someone who is 35 who has their front teeth.
Yes, yes, true.
Can I be more straightforward?
True.
And I think we have to confront it, and it has been I've thought about it. Here are the numbers, Madam Speaker. Over the past year, last financial year, 62,000 extractions had to be done as opposed to fillings and rehabilitation. In the future, where possible, we need to give those persons a second chance. This year, we will introduce a program called Second Chance Smiles. Second Chance Smiles, where 10,000 Jamaicans under 60 years will get an opportunity to apply for replacement dentures through over 82 dental centers across the island. Madam Speaker, those who apply will get measured at these locations and orders made for manufactured dentures with a training session about how you take care of your teeth. Because that has to be solved too. Because we only get in the problem in the first place because we never brushed often enough, we never did what we needed to do. So public education is key. This, Madam Speaker, we expect to spend some $60 million on this program over the next 18 to 24 months. We will be conducting also, very importantly, an assessment of the oral health program to see what measures can be implemented in the future to support teeth or tooth-saving procedures instead of extraction as a first option. We also need to examine, Madam Speaker, by the way, the policy of overseas missions coming to Jamaica. More often than not, with dental students who can't just extract in America or anywhere else, and Jamaicans are used as a kind of clinical, practical training ground for extraction, and that's something that we're going to look into. We'll also be continuing our school's good oral hygiene intervention, and we'll explore partnerships with the private sector to promote good oral health. I want to encourage any private company to come on board on this oral health program. It probably could mean good business for you if you're in that line of business. Madam Speaker, we not just talk, we're action. This government. I'm also saying that the program has started.
Yes.
Because we have our first beneficiary of Second Chance Smiles, a gentleman by the name of Ashman Brockup Clark, 43 years old from Westmoreland. You know, when I spoke to Ashman, a.k.a. Brockup, and there's a reason for the Brockup thing, but I won't go into that here. He said to me that, Minister, the reality is, and I met him some time ago, he said, Minister, the reality is that I love certain types of food, but I can't eat it. He said, I started losing my permanent teeth from 13. Wow. He's 43 now. As a matter of fact, he said to me, man, I have to use my top lip, I have to drop it like flat bridge, just like push it hard, as bad as that. And he said, Minister, it's hard to get a girl to, a partner, somebody who I like and they like me.
Right,
he said they don't want to kiss me, for example, right? I talk in secret, but he gave me permission to say it. Well, I'm here to announce that Brockup was sent to one of our facilities, measured up, and he now has his full complement of teeth. There he is on the screen, Madam Speaker. And further, he's here with us in the gallery. I wanted to stand up if he's anywhere close by. Where is he? Oh, there he is right there. You see what's happening here? Madam Speaker, total transformation. He has front teeth, side teeth, back teeth, and he's ready to be reintegrated into society. That is what reintegration is about, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, we will support this program for 10,000 persons over a period of time. Madam Speaker, I want to turn to another area called optical screening, eye care, another underserved area in public health and healthcare generally. We all accept that a clear vision is a good enabler for economic and social prospects. I'm proud to announce that by August this year, the Cuban Eye Care program will be back on stream, Madam Speaker. I've spoken to this program already. The system has been set up, and we are now working on the work permits arrangements to get these optometrists and ophthalmologists here in Jamaica. We have programmed some 2,000 persons to receive badly needed eye care surgery under this program. We're also working to re-engage at our local ophthalmology program, and we are planning, Madam Speaker, to go into the schools this year. Yeah. You know, I had a personal case, which I won't elaborate on, but the fact is there are many kids in schools who people interpret as being deviants, troublemakers, when they really can't see the board. Yeah. Nobody is there screening them sufficiently. And I think it's important for us to start early so we can take whatever corrective measures. So 50 schools this year will be targeted for that. Madam Speaker, I want to turn quickly to Kingston Public Hospital in the interest of time. Kingston Public Hospital is a hospital that was the opening of this hospital on the 14th of December 1776. In 1859, the hospital began offering 24-hour service. Between KPH and JVH, Madam Speaker, it has evolved into the largest multidisciplinary hospital in the government health service, as well as the largest trauma center in the public hospital system. Madam Speaker, KPH Victoria Jubilee needs a comprehensive overhaul. And we're going to do it. We're going to do it. We have started. We have already set up a committee involving the chairmanship, the permanent secretary, but a wide stakeholder cross-section of persons, experts. We're looking now for a consultant firm to do an audit of the institution. We have committed $300 million this year to start some minor rehabilitative work, plus the operating theaters under the Code Care facility. Great. We have also, based on a cabinet decision, linked St. Joseph's Hospital with Kingston Public Hospital. And St. Joseph's Hospital will be an extension of KPH, focusing primarily on oncology and nephrology. And that work has commenced. So you will see an expanded KPH with St. Joseph Hospital focusing as a center of excellence in that area. Madam Speaker, I have an able Minister of State. Very supportive. Very supportive. And Madam Speaker, I now understand why she's a world champion. Because she has discipline and she applies herself. I want to thank the Honourable Prime Minister for assigning her beside me to help to implement the priorities of public health. And let me just name two areas that she has been a champion. One is in maternal and child health, mother and child health. Madam Speaker, we have a problem in terms of the SDG targets, Sustainable Development Goals target, which says by 2030 we should have 70 deaths per 100,000 births. We're now at 145. Now we still have some ways to go, and there's a program. But a big part of the problem, Madam Speaker, has been the extent to which we control and direct and guide mothers, expectant mothers, both in the early stages as well as in the immediate stages, antenatal care. My colleague, Minister of State Juliet Cuthbert Flynn, has been working to reverse the trend. She has been assigned to that, and she's doing a good job. Already since her appointment in 2020, she has moved to develop significant campaigns to improve maternal health outcomes. One such is the intervention in the Start Right initiative. So the objective here is to provide adolescent and vulnerable mothers with an incentive for their full participation in the antenatal care provided in the public health system. Mothers are encouraged through an ongoing public education campaign to visit their health centers. And one incentive for that is on the screen, which is a snuddle nest, which is essentially, for layman's argument, a crib, a starter crib. And it comes with goodies in the box. And every time the mothers go to the health center, they add another goodie to the box. Primarily people who are socially challenged or economically challenged. We encourage them to come to the health center. So we have given out 100 of those this year. This minister is going to hand out another 3,000 such snuggle nests while we educate mothers about the importance of this initiative for better antenatal care. But she's doing another very important task, which I have to mention, and that is in blood collection. You know, we don't realize how much we need blood until we need it. Yes. Or a family member or a loved one needs it, because we don't have a culture of giving blood. Well, this minister who is assigned to that work over the last 2 years has done a lot. I'm excited about the innovative approach, which includes targeting schools, high schools, which she has done so far, going into 4 schools to get them not just to give blood, but to become regular donors, which is an important thing. So far, they have collected some 85 units of blood, which, by the way, according to the clinicians, could save potentially 255 lives. We're saving lives, Madam Speaker. This year, we're targeting, through the minister, another 20 high schools to collect 600 units, but she's doing more. We're looking at parishes for blood collection centers, St. Mary, Portland, St. Thomas, and we will deploy 2 mobile blood collection units. One COVID bus to be converted, and we're going to be buying another one. This minister is on the road, and he's working, and we should applaud and appreciate her efforts. Madam Speaker, the National Health Fund is 20 years old this year, and I believe all of us on both sides of the House should commend the National Health Fund for the work that they have done for the Jamaican people. And the leadership. Madam Speaker, over the past year, the fund has served approximately 960,000 Jamaicans, subsidized medicines through 160 drug-served windows, 523 community pharmacies accepting the NHF card, 2.8 million scripts were processed, seeing 8.3 million items dispensed, over 4.4 million claims for the NHF card at a cost of some $6.43 billion in subsidy. And the NHF has spent almost $650 million supporting projects, health centers, other such tangible capital-related projects. And we want to commend them for that, because the truth is, and you know, we don't even need to say it. They have won so many awards. They have beaten out a lot of private companies in terms of governance. And it shows that under good leadership and proper organization, we can make things happen. And it also shows that we're not just talking, we're also implementing. So I want to say a big commendation to Everton and his team, to the board chairman, Mr. Shane Dallin, on the board, who have done a lot of work, and those before them over the last 20 years. Yes. But you know, Madam Speaker, medication costs continue to increase compared to last year. The budget increased for pharmacy services in the public sector by 10%, that's 1.1 billion. NHF card by 21%, 1.59 billion. So it segues, therefore, into a conversation around healthcare financing. And it's very important that I think we engage or expand the engagement of the population on how we're going to finance healthcare in a sustainable way going forward. Because as it stands now, it's not sustainable. If we do not achieve in terms of some of the prevention methods, we're not going to be able to buy enough medication or build enough hospitals. Yes. The numbers have said it. Know your numbers. Yeah. That more people are getting sick sooner and more are dying earlier. Yes. Which means a burden on the healthcare system. And so, Madam Speaker, again, sorry that I have to table so many documents, but it's necessary. Financing the cost of healthcare in Jamaica. I table a document which is a follow-on from what we did the last time, Madam Speaker, which will be on the website of the ministry. We won't print as many copies for cost savings, but this will form the basis of a discussion nationally. And we're going to take this to the road this year, because we need every single Jamaican to understand what the implications are for ill health, for themselves and also collectively. There are many issues to be addressed in this document, but we will go throughout the communities. I want to also take the opportunity, however, to thank the support of the World Bank on this very important initiative. The World Bank has been working with us on this health financing project. This year, the bank will complement the existing body of information with the completion of a public expenditure review. The review is aimed at assessing the levels of efficiency in healthcare expenditure and providing critical information on how we as a government can strengthen the health system with the resources that we already receive. We are very eager to get that expenditure review because we don't have anything to hide. What we want is information to make better informed decisions. And so I salute the World Bank for that. Out of all of this, we hope will come a green paper, which then will morph over time into a new policy as we seek to look forward towards how we will finance healthcare for the benefit of our population. Madam Speaker, I want to turn to service quality in our hospitals. I told you I had a lot of things to say, and I crave your indulgence, but I'm winding down soon. Madam Speaker, the last year, we had 235 patient complaints through our patient management system. Of the total complaints received, 85% were related to facilities, and the remaining 15% due to perceived negligence by healthcare workers. While we have seen the improvements of our services, and yes, we have, you know, I know that when one incident occurs, it tends to grab headline, negative incident, because it's more newsworthy from the perspective of the editors. Good news don't sell. Bad news is more saleable, I think, in this culture that we exist in. The reality is that we have seen improvements in the services because we have done, not us, but the customer service survey done by the Public Sector Modernization Unit has shown that service quality has improved. And this is because all of the other things that we're doing. But too many Jamaicans still, and we have to accept it, come into our health system and are not treated with the courtesies that they deserve. And I'm prepared to admit that because we have challenges that we still need to overcome. One is too many, Madam Speaker, but we have to recognize, and we have to get that culture going, that our patients are our customers in distress, and treatment starts at the entrance of the facility, from the gate. And that is a missing culture that we have to reinforce and develop. So, Madam Speaker, this year we'll be continuing on the compassionate care program. We're going to be building out the wait space and all the associated services because we can't stop waiting There's no country in the world where health is free, or even cases where it is paid for, where you don't have to go and wait. And it is a misnomer for people to say that somehow you must go and get through same time. So I understand that when people go to hospital, it's because they're sick or their loved ones, so they're in distress. But we who are there must understand that that is their disposition. And we must find a way to break that by reassuring them and showing empathy. Yes. And so we're going to improve wait areas, including bathrooms, but seated areas. Percy Junior Hospital, Port Antonio, Anato Bay, Maypen, Bustamante Hospital, Mandeville, as well as St. Catherine Hall Health Center, Cambridge Health Center, and Maypen Type 4. All will receive special attention this year to improve the quality of wait and the courtesies that will be extended to the patients. We will also improve access by patients of the complaints management system through the engagement of a business processing outsourcing firm.
Oh, good.
So you see, part of the complaint has been that people call and don't get no answer.
Yeah.
So we're going to outsource it. We're going to hire a BPO, since we have expertise in that. So when you call, the phone will be answered, you lodge your complaint, and the follow-up will take place. And I'm going to monitor that carefully. Madam Speaker, we will also be working to expand the personnel that provide customer service. We wrote to the Ministry of Finance, we got permission, and so we're in the process now of hiring 20 new posts within the regional health authorities who will manage the customer service component. Additionally, we will be training up to 90% of our personnel in public health that have to interface directly and immediately with patients during the course of this year around the critical courtesies that are necessary. Madam Speaker, we take customer service seriously. We're not perfect. We still have challenges, but we're going to work to fix it because that is what we're about, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, two other things I'll mention and then close, and I crave your indulgence. Thanks again. And that's the area now of mental health. Yeah. I can't speak without addressing mental health because, unfortunately, it's something we like to hide from.
Yes, culturally.
And the time is now that we need to normalize mental health within our culture because it is a normal phenomenon that we must treat with and find ways to provide therapy and treatment to those who are so affected. You know, 2 years ago I said in this house that the Mental Health and Homelessness Task Force report said that 40% of Jamaicans at some point in their lives had a mental health issue. Anxiety, depression, whatever. And then I started to count how many of us are in here because it means for every 10 there are 4. So Madam Speaker, the only point I'm making is that we are all vulnerable to mental health challenges. Every single one of us. And you know, Madam Speaker, COVID has taught us that life is fragile. Over 3,500 deaths and thousands others are suffering because of post-COVID trauma. Mental health disorders have been a major side effect of the COVID experience. Yes. In 2019, the Ministry established our mental health and suicide prevention helpline that has shown significant usage over the years. Since its inception, some 4,726 calls have been managed by our team of psychologists. For the year 2022, the Mental Health and Suicide Helpline received a total of 2,190 calls, an increase of 24% when compared to the 1,648 calls reported at the end of 2021. Already this year, we have had 577 calls from the helpline. Additionally, in an effort to engage our youth who have suffered tremendous trauma from COVID, we have partnered with UNICEF, Madam Speaker, to implement the You Matter mental health chatline, which has conducted more than 2,000 counseling sessions, treating issues such as suicidal ideation, anxiety, depression, stress, and mood disorders. Madam Speaker, this year the Ministry will be doing more to enhance the mental health response in our community engagement and with the continued collaboration, this time with the Pan American Health Organization for the Problem Management Plus, or PM Plus intervention. Already the program has trained 119 community members from entities such as churches, civic groups, and the community-based organizations, providing them with the basic tools for counseling and psychosocial support. This year, the intention is to train some 180 persons, including 30 supervisors. Essentially, we go into communities, we ask for volunteers, persons who have already demonstrated the capacity to provide leadership. We train them working with PAHO, and then we deploy them in their communities. Great. So they pick up persons who have issues, and they offer to help them solve their problems. Because sometimes people just want somebody to talk to. You know, a lot of these things are elevated to worse conditions if you don't nip it in the bud, if you don't solve it right away. And we all need a friend at some point in our lives, and that is what these persons are there for. We're also working in the schools with the Ministry of Education, and the ministry has been very understanding of this issue. The minister is right here before me. We have trained some 531 school personnel in understanding how to optimize and maintain good mental health, understanding mental disorders and their treatment, decreasing stigma, enhancing the help-seeking efficacy, which is knowing when and where to get help and having the skills necessary to promote self-care and to obtain good care. Additionally, as we all know, we have had the Do Your Share campaign, which will target some 50 additional schools this year, where we go into the schools and we have a dialogue with the young people around their thoughts, their motivations, or the lack of that, and try to steer them in the right direction using trained clinicians, and that will continue in collaboration with the Ministry of Health. As it relates to Bellevue Hospital, another institution that is stigmatized, I want to spend a minute on that. There's a very important intervention that we intend to make this year. We will begin to implement a comprehensive overhaul of the Bellevue Hospital to address over 400 social cases currently housed at the institution. And I know it's not Minister Mackenzie's fault. He's in charge of social cases as the Minister of Local Government. And he and I have worked very closely together. In fact, we collaborated on establishing and expanding some of these facilities, including in Spanish Town and other places, Minister Mackenzie. But the reality is that Bellevue has become a home for the homeless, not a place to treat mental health deficiencies. And most of the population in Bellevue are persons who have controlled conditions but have nowhere to go because of the stigma in society. They have been cast out. That's why they end up on the streets, and we can't put them out on the streets. So we have 400 of those. What we are effectively going to be doing this year is separating the social cases population from the chronically mentally ill population. Because there are some people who need institutionalization. And we intend, under the Mental Health Act and the National Health Services Act, in creating facilities to properly rehabilitate and reintegrate into society individuals who have been impacted by different types of mental health challenges. Mental health as a non-communicable disease can rob our society, our community, and families, Madam Speaker, of valuable human resource. So that reintegration is critical. So we're going to be developing a more activist program around reintegration. We have allocated $150 million for that, and a specific program guided by the board, headed by Dr. Diana Thorburn, and the team on the ground, the management, will make that process work, supported by the clinical experts. In addition to that, the intention is to create a 100-bed chronically mentally challenged facility on the same compound. Now, we're going to move around how we organize the facility, because it's a big campus. But ultimately, we need to build a proper mental health facility. Yeah. And because of the focus on community-based intervention, which we're developing, we don't need a campus as big as Bellevue. Indeed, we need to find a way to start anew. And I'm not even sure if Bellevue is the right name, but that is just my opinion. The battle is on internally as to whether or not that should happen. But we may have to look at a whole new start. But that 100-bed facility will be for the mentally challenged, while the other facility will be for environmental. Madam Speaker, before I conclude, I just want to say that, and yes, we have done a lot of printing.
Yes.
And yes, and I know it's costly, but we think it's necessary. So tabled here are a number of documents. Because, Madam Speaker, we think through the process, we engage in hours of research, we collect the data, but we want the data to be available. This government is transparent. Yes. We have nothing to hide. When there are challenges, we take the challenges on frontally. Oh, yes. And I certainly, as Minister of Health, try to be very humble about it. I will defend my position, but I welcome alternative positions, because we don't know it all. So, Madam Speaker, we have the health financing and the cost of health care in Jamaica. We have achievements and highlights of financial year 2022-23. So if you want an update on all the things that we have done, because I could mention everything, it's right here, including some of the internal management issues. We have our vitals. This is the most current on non-communicable diseases. This will give you a lot more data on non-communicable diseases. And I want to thank again Dr. Webster Carr and her team for collecting that data and give you a perspective on lifestyle-related diseases. We have a collector's item on COVID. I know COVID is not a great topic, but guess what? It's the worst challenge we have been through. And when you have your grandchildren, you may want to revisit this and remember the challenges that we have had to overcome. This gives all the data on COVID. We have the human resource for health, clinicians workforce, which speaks to the 2,000 additional posts. It's not just general practitioners, specialists, many different, and why and where they'll be deployed and how it will improve the health service. And finally, we have me. And, Madam Speaker, this is the content of my presentation, which is captured in this particular document, which may not be a collector's item, but hopefully it will help in the better understanding of what is happening in public health. Madam Speaker, all of this content will be placed on the Ministry of Health and Wellness website. So, Madam Speaker, much has been said about the work program of the Ministry of Health and Wellness. We have made many announcements of programs to come, but importantly, we have shown that much work is taking place on the implementation of past announcement. I want to say, Madam Speaker, without fear, confidently, that I am proud of my team and I am proud of the part that this government has played in advancing public health in Jamaica. You know, I have never been to my cabinet without telling tales out of school or my Prime Minister and made a case that is in the best interest of the people of Jamaica from a public health perspective and gotten a negative response. And that is a tribute to him as a leader and to the cabinet, the executive arm of Jamaica, and the political director. Never before has a government had crisis after crisis. Yes. When we became government, not to be political, and sorry for the 30 extra seconds. Madam Speaker, sometimes when I hear the criticisms, I sit back and I digest it, because I encourage people can talk and should talk. We must be arrogant about it. We must maintain our humility, and we must recognize valuable contributions. But we have gone through, this is an interesting truth. We inherited a government that had the tail end of chickpea. Then we were hit with zigbee. Then after that, we had 1 year of dengue. Then we had the unfortunate collapse because of neglect of the Cornwall Regional Hospital. Yes. That was a crisis in of itself. One of the bigger crises that this government has faced. Then we were hit with the worst crisis in 200 years. Well, 100 years, sorry, which is the COVID pandemic. Yes. Madam Speaker, the fact that most Jamaicans live to tell the tale is a tribute to our stewardship as a government. And, you know, let me just tell you, sometimes we sweat the small things. Sometimes we are critical without seeing some of the bigger picture and how it has assisted. As I said, I'm not against critique, I'm not against comments, I'm not against suggestions, but what I'm prepared to say is that this public health team and this government has not only acted to stave off crisis after crisis, we have acted strategically to build a more resilient health service, as evidenced by what is here. Madam Speaker, we have taken the criticisms with our heads up. We have listened. I have listened. And we have learned where we needed to. But always we have pushed ahead with the conviction of doing the right thing for the people of Jamaica. Madam Speaker, that is our mission. God bless Jamaica land we love.
Thanks for the program.
Read them. You might appreciate them. You might appreciate the content.
Madam Speaker, what a presentation. I really want to thank the Minister for all the goodies. All the good news. And Madam Speaker, at this point, I now ask that the sectoral debate be suspended.
Members, the question before the House is for the suspension of the sectoral debate. Those in favour? Those against, the ayes have it. The sectoral debate is now suspended.
Madam Speaker, I now ask for the recommittal of announcements.
Is for the recommittal of the item announcements on the agenda. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. Announcements.
Also laid on the table of the House today are the following. From the Ministry of Health and Wellness, vitals, non-communicable diseases, vitals, coronavirus, COVID-19 edition, achievements, highlights for the financial year 2022-2023, financing the cost of health care in Jamaica towards universal health coverage and discussion paper, and human resources for health, clinicians, workforce. That's it. Accident and emergencies.
Madam Speaker, it is not contemplated for us to do any further business today. I therefore ask that the House be adjourned until Tuesday, May 9 at 2 p.m. sharp. Next week we will resume the sectoral debate, and our speakers. When I'm talking about Madam Speaker, I know Minister Shaw will be speaking next week when we resume. So at this point, I ask for the adjournment until May 9 at 2 p.m. Thank you.
Members, the question before the House is that we do adjourn until next week, Tuesday, the 9th of May at 2 p.m. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. This House is now adjourned.
6 but with pure picture of Chris.